Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to this Louie T Network exclusive breaking news. Panthers fire head coach Ron Rivera after 9 years as Panthers head coach. I honestly did not think this was going to happen in season, if it was going to happen at all. Now, I talked about this on the podcast just a mere 2 weeks ago, and I said, look, I don't think he's going to be fired, but I said it wouldn't shock me if he was. And I said, look, this season is trending in the wrong direction. And I actually thought up until 3 weeks ago, or about a month ago I actually thought this was one of the best jobs that Ron Rivera had ever done as Panthers head coach. Obviously, there's the 15-1 of 2015, and no one's taking that away from him. But that was a buzzsaw that no team in the league wanted any parts of until the Denver Broncos were able to slay them in Super Bowl 50. But outside of that season, to me, this was his best coaching job, because if you would have told me before the season there was not going to be any Cam Newton and that they were going to have to find a way to win games, I would have laughed in your face and told you this is a 3-13 team with Kyle Allen starting at quarterback. Instead, he had them at 5-3 at one point before the thing started to go sideways a bit. The loss versus Atlanta was the beginning of the end for me, or not for me, but for owner David Tepper. The loss to the Redskins was the tip of the iceberg. I think that's the straw that broke the camel's back. Essentially, when you looked at the whole body of work, Ron Rivera, and I said this on my podcast, I remember back in the days, I was not a Ron Rivera guy, and I said, look, get rid of this guy. What are you waiting on? And remember, he's a Jerry Richardson guy, first and foremost. So you have to always keep these types of things in mind. We talk about this all the time when you get a new general manager into an organization and you got a coach that was already there, you got players that were already there, and they were draft picks of the old general manager, and that new GM comes in and he starts cleaning the house, gets rid of the coach, gets rid of some players, and starts to turn over the roster and starts to get guys in there that kind of fit what he thinks and his mentality and what he wants to do. This is kind of the same thing here with David Tepper. He was going to be patient initially, come in, not want to, ruffle any feathers right away, not want to rock the boat per se. Panthers were only 2 years or and a half years or so removed from, being in the Super Bowl when he took over this team. So, he kind of wanted to take a wait and see approach. Let's see what Ron Rivera has. Let's see what Cam Newton can do for us. Marty Hurney was back on board. Let's see what he can do. It looks like Marty Hurney is going to be safe. Remember, it sounded like Hurney and Rivera could be in trouble when he was asked after the Saints game about the long-term future of both of those guys. I thought that GM Marty Hurney might be in just as much trouble, if not more so, than head coach Ron Rivera. But it turns out, looks like Hurney is going to get the green light to stay on board and try to help turn this thing around. Meanwhile, Rivera was asked to pack his things up and leave. So, he talked about he being Panthers' new owner. David Tepper talked about, and I think it's time to stop calling him the new owner. He's the owner of the Carolina Panthers now, and he's been there for going on 2 seasons now. So I think it's time to shed the new owner label. But he talked about, wanting this team to be better than what they had shown, and he's not going to stand for mediocrity. And this is what they are. I mean, again, no Cam Newton. I don't know what he was expecting them to be without Cam Newton. But, with Kyle Allen at quarterback, they are lucky to be 5-7, to be honest with you. They could easily be 3-9 right now. They probably should be 3-9 with Kyle Allen at quarterback. But they won some games, and they could have easily lost some games just as much as they could have easily won some games. Could have won the Redskins game. Probably should have won the Redskins game. The Redskins are horrible. And the fact that you lose that game, I think that was the one where he said, all right, this thing is getting out of control. And I hate the fact that the Redskins are everybody's rock bottom, okay? The Lions fans and the newspaper was saying, look, we shouldn't even play the Thanksgiving game after losing to the Redskins. It's rock bottom. The Panthers lose against the Redskins. They fire their coach in season. The Redskins are the new watermark for rock bottom. You lose to them and changes have to be made. So, unfortunately for Ron Rivera, his time was up in Carolina. I grew to like Ron Rivera. Thought he was doing an admirable job given the circumstances with this football team. They've dealt with a number of injuries, and I just felt like I didn't know what they were expecting with Cam Newton being on the shelf. But obviously, David Tepper thought that they should be better than 5-7, and he deems change necessary. Perry Fewell taking over, to me, is a joke. Perry Fewell is a clown as a defensive coordinator, 1, and 2, as a head coach. Are you kidding me? Perry Fewell is not head coaching material, but he's only going to be the interim head coach for 4 games. So it's going to get worse. I don't know if he thought it was going to get better after making this move, but it's going to get worse. But he's already looking for the new coach in Carolina as we speak. So we'll see who ends up being the guy that they deem it. And honestly speaking, I think this is an interesting search. Why? Because the next guy that you bring in, what are you telling him? Are you saying, hey, look, Cam's the guy, and we're gonna build around Cam Newton. He's still got good football left in him. If you love Cam, then this is the job for you. Or are you telling that guy, hey, look, you can come in here. You can assess the situation. We can move on from Cam. We can draft a young quarterback. We can roll with Kyle Allen if you like what you see there. If you don't like Kyle Allen and you don't think Cam Newton is the guy that fits what you do best, we can also move on and draft a guy. Like, what are you telling that new head coach, that prospective head coach that you're sitting down having a meeting with? What are you trying to sell him on in terms of taking this job at the quarterback position? I'm just as much fascinated with that as I am anything else that is being said in that meeting, because to me, that's a big part of why coaches take jobs in this league is, hey, who's going to be my quarterback? Because generally, the head coach and the quarterback are tied at the hip. If the quarterback isn't any good, most likely that coach is going to get fired sooner rather than later. So I want to know what the Panthers' future looks like at the quarterback position. What decisions have or have they not made yet at that position? Because to me, that's how you're going to go about finding the next guy. And maybe talking to Marty Herney, you'll be able to get a little bit of insight as to what the Panthers are thinking about there. But I don't know. It just sounds like a move that, to me, is knee-jerk reaction after losing to the Redskins. 4 games left in the season. Honestly, you could have been working the back channels looking for a new head coach. Like, you didn't have to make this move here because there's no benefit to this. It's not like you're going to get hot and run the table and win the last 4 games of the season and throw your name in the hat. First of all, in the NFC, 7 losses gets you nowhere but home. You've already got 7 losses. So what was the point of getting rid of Ron Rivera with 4 games left in the season? I really don't understand it. Again, he wants to get a head start. You could have gotten a head start with Rivera still being the head coach. You could have been working the back channels quietly, going about your business and interviewing prospective candidates and figuring out what you want to do. You still got to go through the Rooney Rule. You still got to interview a minority candidate for the job anyway. It's not like you're going to be able to hire someone as soon as the season's over with. So I just don't understand the timing of this. I understand why it was done, although I don't necessarily agree with it. It might have been time for Ron Rivera to go. I mean, he's been there 9 years. He was one of the longest tenured head coaches in the league. And in a league where NFL stands for not for long, a lot of these coaches don't last past their first contract. A lot of them are fired before their first contract is up. Ron Rivera stayed in Carolina for almost a decade, and he was 3-4 in the postseason, led this team to a Super Bowl back in 2015. I actually thought that he was doing an admirable job given the circumstances this season, but unfortunately for him, his owner did not agree with that assessment, and so he was handed his pink slip today and shown the door. Want to read some comments out there as to what has happened here, because I didn't really see this one coming. Hopefully there are some Panthers fans out there that have a comment or two to contribute to this discussion. If you're out there and you want to comment, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air as I go through the comment section and pick out some comments to read. My man, and it's crazy, my man Syndico called yesterday on Rep Your Squad, and he talked about the Panthers, and I flat out, bluntly asked him, is Ron Rivera going to get fired? And he's like, nah, I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see. But he said, I don't think Ron Rivera is going to get fired. And I'm like, man, I think Ron's in trouble. And sure enough, the very next day, we're having this conversation about Ron Rivera being relieved of his duties. Syndico says, I gave everyone the heads up yesterday. Ron is done. D-O-N-E, he said. To his credit, he is a good coach, but in the end, his flaw clearly outweighed his accolades. He will get a job instantly. He said, to me, I remember the conversation being that Ron, he wasn't sure if Ron was going to get fired, but he said he thinks Ron is done. That's how I remember the conversation going yesterday. I have to play it back to see exactly what was said. I know I felt like he was done. 3 weeks ago, I didn't think he was done. On my podcast 3 weeks ago, I didn't think Ron was going to get fired. But then again, I didn't think they were going to lose to the Redskins. I thought the end of this season was going to be vastly different than what it was. If Joey Sly doesn't choke in New Orleans, are we having this conversation right now? Because I think a team that comes into the Redskins game at 6-6 with playoff hopes, or excuse me, if they win that football game, they come into the Redskins game not at 6-6 or 5-6. They rather 6-5. With a chance to get to 7-5 and be right smack dab in the middle of the playoff chase. Are we having this conversation if Joey Sly doesn't choke in New Orleans? I don't know. I mean, that's the fine line in this league. But Wahoo Brad says, could Riverboat Ron be coming to the Redskins? I don't think so. I don't think that's the kind of guy that they're looking for in Washington, but I could be wrong. It's hit or miss right now. But I feel like they want someone that's a little bit more of a stickler for discipline than that of Ron Rivera. And I say that, and this is the same guy that benched Cam Newton for not wearing a tie. So I don't know. I don't think that he's the kind of guy that they're looking for, but I could be wrong. Anyway, Syndico also says, here were the charges Panthers Nation filed against Ron Rivera. No in-game adjustments, poor clock management, loyal to a fault to veteran players, predictable play calling, conservative. It's funny that last one is conservative when yet the moniker Riverboat Ron was given to him for all the times he went for it on fourth down in some critical situations. But a lot of these charges filed against Ron Rivera by Panthers fans are charges that are filed against just about every coach in the league with the exception of a handful of elite NFL head coaches. Most coaches don't know how to manage the clock. I mean, literally, there are 32 NFL head coaches. I'd go on record to say that at least, and I'm probably selling guys short. At least 20 coaches in the league have no idea how to manage the clock. It's probably closer to 25 than it is 20. It's probably more like 23 coaches. Okay, so that's a charge that most NFL head coaches are guilty of. They have no idea how to manage the clock. They said no in-game adjustments. And I go on record to say that probably of those 23 coaches that don't know how to manage the clock, in that group, 15 of them probably don't make sound in-game adjustments. Loyal to a fault to veteran players, that's probably specific to each head coach. Some coaches have no loyalty. Look, the best guy that gives me a chance to win is getting in. And then you got coaches that, look, this guy has been a mainstay for us for a very long time. And until he can't do it, I'm going to give him every opportunity to continue to do it. And that can get you to a fault sometimes, but I don't necessarily have that big of a deal with that one. Predictable play calling. He's more of a, I don't know, because Ron Rivera to me is a defensive guy. So I feel like he's one of those, hey, you handle the offense. I'm going to stay over here with the defense. You guys have at it. So I feel like Norv Turner has the license to do whatever the hell he wants to do, play calling wise. And remember, I'm a Redskins fan. Norv Turner was the Redskins head coach. And one of the knocks on Norv Turner was, hey, those first 15 scripted plays, man, right out of the gate, those shits are fire, okay? He's going to take you down the field. You're going to score some points on those first 15. After that, limited adjustments, and you're probably going to get a little stale on offense. What did we see versus the Redskins? First 15, fire. I'm talking about fire, flame fire. 8 of 8 for Kyle Allen for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. Went right down the field. And after that, what happened? No adjustments. And they stopped running the football with Christian McCaffrey, and he was having a really good day. I don't know why he did that, but again, that's another conversation for another day. Anyway, continuing right along, Emperor Meat says Dave Gettleman's draws need to be changed after this news. And you know what? It's a shame because when I look at the situation in Carolina, and when I was talking to my man Syndico last night, he said, look, I don't know what, the organization thinks is going to be happening. And when he said that, he was more so talking about David Tepper. But he's like, there's a rebuild coming in Carolina. I don't know if they know it yet, and I don't know if Panthers fans know this or not, but a rebuild is coming. We've got to hit rock bottom before we're able to reascend and come back from the ashes like Phoenix. We're going to hit rock bottom. And so he thinks that there's going to be much, much worse times for Panthers fans in the near future. And obviously, that is not what David Tepper thinks of this organization. And that is not what he's looking to stand for either. And so, I understand that this team was 5-7, but again, without Cam Newton, what were you really expecting to happen this season? That is the thing that boggles my mind right now, is that it'd be one thing if Cam Newton were healthy and this team just underachieved. Keep in mind, when Cam Newton was healthy last year, this was a 6-2 ball club. All right. So I struggle with this firing for a guy that has won when his quarterback has been relatively healthy, and now that Cam Newton has been banged up, this team has underachieved in his absence. But underachieved, to me, is a term that I use very loosely because you didn't have your starting quarterback. And I know a lot of people started drinking the Kyle Allen Kool-Aid, and some even got drunk off the punch. And I said, yo, slow your roll, okay? Pump the brakes. Like, this is not a guy that you want to be your starting quarterback over Cam Newton. I think you're seeing that now. But again, my biggest thing moving forward, okay, so what's done is done. Ron Rivera has been ousted as Panthers head coach. So what's done is done. What I'm interested in now is, what are you telling the next guy that you're interviewing? What are you telling the prospective head coaching candidates about this job? What's the attractive player or players that you're going to sell to make a guy want to come here and take this job? Because right now, I don't know about the quarterback position. If Cam Newton is the guy, I'm all in. But then again, what about the next guy coming in? Does he believe in Cam Newton as a head coach? And what's David Tepper's stance there? Is he's saying, look, either you're in on Cam or you're out. Like, Cam's the guy. But he didn't sound like he was all in on Cam himself when asked by reporters after the New Orleans Saints game. So I don't really know what to make of this. It's really interesting. I want to see what ends up happening. I'm fascinated by this whole situation. But at the end of the day, Ron Rivera out after 9 years with the Carolina Panthers. And I didn't see this coming, not with 4 games left in the season. At worst, let Ron finish up. You move on from him on Black Monday, and then you start your search. And like I said, even if he wanted to start the search now, which is why he moved on from Ron Rivera at this very moment, he could have been doing this behind, back channels, behind the scenes without Ron Rivera even knowing what the hell was going on. And as soon as the season was over, he could have sat Ron down, thanked him for his service to the team and said, hey, man, we're going in a different direction. And then already had his candidate in mind, went ahead with the Rooney Rule, interviewed the minority candidate, and then hired his guy. But that's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to go ahead and start the process openly. So now we'll see what happens with the Carolina Panthers. But Ron Rivera fired as Carolina Panthers head coach with 4 games remaining in the season. I'm not a fan of in-season firings, especially when they don't really have a chance to spark you in that current season. To me, when you make an in-season firing, it's because the team isn't responding and there's still plenty of games left and you feel like maybe we can turn something around. Maybe we can spark something. Maybe one of the coaches on the staff is a guy that I would like to take a look at as a potential head coaching candidate. So let's give him an opportunity to start showing what he's capable of. That's why you fire a guy in season. With 4 games left, what are you looking to accomplish? I really don't understand the timing of this. But in any event, as Syndico said, Ron Rivera will land on his feet. I think he will get another opportunity to coach in this league. His track record speaks for himself. He had a winning overall record, as you see on the screen flashing before you. Took his team to the Super Bowl. Not many guys in this league can say that as well. So I think he will land on his feet. He will be gainfully employed, whether it's this year or he decides to take a year off, as we see a lot of the big-time head coaches do, and then come back into the fold. We'll see. And we'll see where he lands. And we'll see what the Panthers decide to do in terms of filling this vacancy. Marty Hurney looks to be safe as the Panthers look to go into the offseason to find a new head coach. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. I thank you guys for joining me. Leave comments in the comment section about what you think about this firing and was it justified? Would you have done it? And what should the Panthers do? And who should they be looking for? What kind of a head coach should the Panthers be looking for in replacing Ron Rivera? I'll see you guys later. Thanks again for joining me. Have a good one.
Louie T Network.